Welcome back to This is Baseball. Welcome to 2026 regular season baseball. Finally, we're about 5 games into the season at time of recording here, depending on what team it is that you root for. And 5 games in, there's no longer any undefeated teams around the league anymore. We know that there were some sweeps in the opening weekend, the Dodgers, Marlins, Brewers, Yankees. But it's obviously way too early in the season to talk about how well a team is going to do in the season. It's 162 games, so we're not going to spend too much time on the early results of the season so far. I think the biggest story in baseball has been something that we knew that was going to be coming in the Major League Baseball season in 2026, and that is the implementation of the ABS challenge system, something that had been tested in the minor leagues for some time. They found that it was a positive and something that was working. And if you are somebody that's been following baseball over the last 10 years, Rob Manfred and the people in the commissioner's office are no strangers to adjusting the rules in an effort to improve the game of baseball. And I've said it multiple times in this podcast. I know that Rob Manfred gets a lot of grief from fans around the league of he hates baseball and he's doing too much. He keeps changing things. And this is one of those things that I think is going to have an overall positive impact, the same way that the pitch clock has made the baseball experience better for the fan in basically every way possible. That was something that was not met with great excitement from the fan base, but it has made baseballs easier to consume. It has brought games on average down half an hour at least. So we had games that were above 3 hours on average, and now we're sitting in that 230 to 240 range as far as how long Major League Baseball games are played. And with the ABS challenge system, they kind of went back and forth between two things of, are we going to have this challenge system where the players have the power to question whether or not the umpire accurately called a ball versus a strike? And they went between that and just going fully with an automated balls and strike system where basically a robot would tell an umpire, this is a ball, this is a strike, vice versa, and the umpire would call based on what the computer read in that certain situation. They decided to keep some of the human element in it and went with the challenge system, which I like for now, but it's one of those things, at least in the early goings of the season, that wow, this was something that was extremely necessary. The umpires, as we know, throughout the years have been just very, very inconsistent with their calls. Each umpire has their own unique strike zone. There wasn't consistency from game to game based on who was behind the plate. There was a lot of, well, this umpire calls balls or calls strikes that are inside. He doesn't call outside pitches, or they're calling balls and strikes based off of where they're standing, based off of where they're positioned behind the plate. Sometimes they'll be, not directly behind the plate. And it's just, there's a lot of inconsistency and a lot that needs to be fixed. And with the ABS challenge system, remember, each team gets 2 challenges per game. If they successfully challenge a call, they retain that challenge. If they fail, they lose a challenge. And the only players that can make those challenges are the batter, the catcher, and the pitcher. There's no outside influence that can happen. The manager can't do anything. I know the Brewers in spring training had like a card up in their dugout for all of a game that was like, hey, if we have the green card in here, then you have the green light to challenge. If it's red, then you can't. MLB shut that down. So there can be no outside influence to the batter, catcher, or pitcher in an ABS challenge scenario. And they have to basically do it within a second. They have to acknowledge, and the way that they do it is they tap their helmet and say, hey, I want to challenge. And the actual challenge itself takes all of 10 seconds. So it's not like a traditional challenge of safe or out at second base or was this a home run where it takes a minute and a half or 3 minutes to get done. It basically adds all of a minute to the game when it's all said and done. So it's a welcome addition to the game for me. It's been interesting to see a lot of the philosophies that the teams have had. A lot of teams have come out and said, the Royals specifically, I know, have said it, Brian Sweeney, that they don't want pitchers to be the ones to challenge balls or strikes. They're just going to allow their catchers to do that. And you've seen that a lot where pitchers have egos and they feel like something's a strike, but they end up being wrong a lot of times, where the catchers obviously have a pretty good eye of what the strike zone is. They're right there, so they can have a better look at what's going on there. Same with the batters. Some batters have better eyes than others, but you've seen some of the challenges are crazy. So in order for a pitch to be a strike, it only, like, any sliver of the ball has to touch the strike zone. The entire ball doesn't need to be in the strike zone. So it could be like the tiniest sliver. Most of the ball could be a ball, but if it's touching the strike zone at all, it is a strike. So you've seen a lot of catchers. Salvador Perez did it multiple times on opening night. He actually went 3 for 3 on opening night in challenges and overturning balls to strikes. And they're just barely on the plate. But you've had some other ones where it's been called a ball and the entire ball is in the strike zone. And those are the ones that this is why the ABS challenge system exists, is to take care of those egregiously bad calls. You're going to have the ones where it's like, yeah, that was borderline. You can't really fault the umpire for being wrong on that, but it's the inconsistency and inaccuracy. And it's finally getting back to what the definition of an actual ball and strike is in baseball. So let's get into some data. This is from Baseball Savant. They have a whole dashboard of ABS data you should go check out if you want to get an in-depth look at what's kind of going on around the league. So as of April 1st, when I'm recording this, overall, the players have a 54% success rate. They have overturned 155 of 286 attempts. Batters are actually only at a 49% success rate when you break it down that way. They are 66 for 134. Their fielders are up to 59%, and those are, like I said, those are predominantly catchers making those decisions. They are 89 for 152. And then you can look again on Baseball Savant. You can look at who are the most successful teams that are from a batting standpoint. The New York Yankees have 10 challenges and they have won 80% of those. The Reds are in second. Athletics, Baltimore, Minnesota. Those are your top 5 teams as far as success rate at the plate. And then on the bottom, you have New York Mets, Miami Marlins, Pittsburgh Pirates, and Atlanta Braves, who have all had at least 2 challenges at the plate and have had 0 success in those challenges. From a fielding perspective, the most successful team right now, as far as actually winning challenges, not necessarily win percentage, but it is the Dodgers have had the most successful challenges, followed by the Brewers, Orioles, Yankees, and Twins. The Royals are right outside the top 5 there, but Yankees, Orioles and Twins are both really good from a batting perspective and from a defensive perspective as far as challenges go. And then again, bottom from a success standpoint, the St. Louis Cardinals and Texas Rangers, Houston Astros, Cincinnati Reds. Those are your bottom teams out on the field. So got to get to work there. And then on ESPN.com, they actually have data from the umpires, of names of umpires that have had pitches challenged, and their calls overturned, their overturn rate. So the most successful umpire is Bruce Dreckman. He has had 4 pitches challenged and 0 overturned. David Rackley, 3 pitches, 0 overturned. Eric Backus, Vic Carapazzi, James Hoy, Quinn Wolcott, all of them have had at least 1 pitch challenged and have had those calls confirmed. And then you have several other umpires that are actually having really good success rate as far as accuracy is concerned. Lance Barkdale's in there, Will Little, John Tumpane, just some umpire names that we recognize there. All are pretty good so far. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum players like Dan Iasonia, who's had 72% of his challenges overturned. He's had 11 pitches challenges. Chris Siegel, he's had 10 pitches challenged. 70% of those have been overturned. We had the hilarious situation with CB Buckner where he's had 8 pitches challenged and 6 of those have been overturned. He had the hilarious at bat with Eugenio Suarez with Cincinnati. He tried to ring him up multiple times and was way off the plate as far as the pitch actually being a strike, and you could tell that he was visibly annoyed. Just for players like CB Buckner and some of the other names, Dan Iasonia that I mentioned, and then Mike Esterbrook has 5 for 5, Chad Whitson 7 for 7 as far as calls getting overturned. Umpires like that this is why this ABS challenge system exists, is because of the just really bad calls by umpires. And listen, we know that calling a ball and a strike is not an easy thing to do. Nobody's saying this should be easy and you should have 100% accuracy, but we've just got to get back to having some sort of standard as to what a ball and a strike is, and the ABS challenge system accomplishes that. And it's been exciting. It's really cool to watch on the broadcast. It is very quick, and the fans get fired up when a call is overturned. So it's just something else to kind of get some juice going in the stands as well. But my overall kind of thought on ABS as I've been watching it is, wow, it's kind of inevitable, I think, in the next 5 years or so. That might be the final thing that Rob Manfred does when he retires in 2029, if it's not expansion, is make automated balls and strikes just the standard, and you remove the challenge system and you just make a robot call balls and strikes in an umpire's ear, and they just audibly call ball, strike, whatever the call may be. I think we're going there. And unless the data in those next 5 years, I know that I'm just speculating as far as that change happening, but unless the data corrects some of the inconsistencies and we see that CB Buckner's been better, and Dan Iasonia's been better, and just all these guys are starting to kind of have better outings, and we're not constantly having to question how this umpire still has a job for how many times we have to sit here and talk about how terrible they are or how inaccurate they are. And that is honestly best case scenario, is that we get there and we go, oh, he's figured it out. It's just nice to finally have some sort of accountability for the umpires in the league, because for so long it hasn't been that way. In fact, questioning balls and strikes or arguing balls and strikes was always the big no-no in baseball. And it was the thing that you're going to argue my call, you're just going to get thrown out of the game. And this gives you a voice if you're a player. So we'll track ABS data and we'll track these umpires throughout the season just to kind of see where they're at, see if some of their inconsistencies level out and we're not really talking about them as much. CB Buckner talking about you've just been in the news for all of the wrong reasons. And we'll keep an eye on that. Are the batters going to continue to trend in the wrong direction from a success rate? Are the fielders going to get better? Are they going to peak over 60% success rate? I know, again, it's still early, but we'll probably do just kind of a month-by-month ABS update, and then we'll get a little bit further into the standings and kind of what's going on around the league as we get into the season. But I felt it was a good week to just talk early ABS returns so far. So that's all I have this week. Thank you for listening to This Is Baseball. We will be back next week. If you are a Royals fan, check out our podcast called Everybody Loves Royals. It is a completely Royals-focused podcast with episodes every Wednesday, content out basically every day in some fashion. Come check that out to get an in-depth conversation about the Kansas City Royals. I will link that podcast in the show notes. See you next week.